Regarding men, number 18. Seriously, Meryl Streep, toxic masculinity doesn't hurt men, it kills them.
Well, here we are with episode 18, I believe, of Regarding Men. And I'm here with Paul Elam of A Voice for Men and An Ear for Men, and with Tom Golden from Men Are Good. And I'm Janice Fiamengo with the Fiamengo File. And today we're going to talk about a subject of popular culture. We're going to talk about Meryl Streep and her statement just a few days ago that she objected to the term toxic masculinity and all of the blowback that she has received as a result of that. Apparently, I didn't actually see this panel discussion, but Meryl Streep was involved in a panel discussion about a show that she's involved in called Big Little Lies. And apparently the cast was talking about how many women apparently are lead up the show, head up the show, and how many men have come forward to say that they enjoy that. And I don't know what exactly led into then Meryl Streep saying that she thought we hurt our boys by calling something toxic masculinity. She said women can be pretty effing toxic, and she thought that the phrase should be changed to toxic people. She went on to say, we have our good angles and our bad ones. I think the labels are less helpful than what we're trying to get to, which is a communication direct between human beings. We're all on that boat together. We've got to make it work. So that was it, a typical, what would have been in previous eras, a completely anodyne, unobjectionable statement. And a few people did praise her for it. But a lot of people also criticized her. And in fact, there were calls to have her booted from the show for saying something, that was so clearly off script. And I thought it was quite interesting just in that it does show how deeply politicized Hollywood has become. I don't think, that anyone would have cared so much a couple of decades ago, or maybe even a decade ago. But now everything that even a Hollywood celebrity has to say about gender relations has to be passed by the feminist censors. And anybody who departs, even in this very mild and minor way, is somehow seen as having let the side down and having committed some kind of crime against humanity. So it's pretty amazing, and it certainly shows how very carefully scrutinized the language of everybody is now. And if you're not with the program, if you don't know what correct phrases to say or not say, you can risk pretty serious censure, even if you're Meryl Streep, as you were saying before we started, Paul. One of the royalty members of the royalty in Hollywood. So yeah, it's quite something. I don't know if you guys want to jump in to talk about the reaction to it.
Well, I want to reiterate something you said too, Janice. I don't think that 10, 15 years ago that we would have seen this kind of reaction. I mean, there was always the Hollywood elite, and they were always liberal, but it was sort of like they dabbled in politics and endorsed candidates here and there, but nothing like the rabid idiots they become now when you see people like Jim Carrey asserting that we all need to have a socialist system, and the attacks on Trump and all the vitriol coming from Hollywood. That was something that didn't happen so much back then. But there's two things that are sort of significant about this for me. One, even a bona fide pickled idiot and narcissist like Meryl Streep can see how wrong the statement of toxic masculinity is. And that's what I was saying earlier when we were talking. Even Meryl Streep can see it because, let's face it, I mean, she's not the sharpest pencil in the box. Her career, if you've ever watched her at the Oscars, gushing over herself as accolades are heaped on her, you get a clear picture of what she's like. But there actually seems to be some social consciousness in what she was saying. Because this is a horrible, horrible thing. I think Karen Strawn said once, and she asked in New York when we debuted the Red Pill movie, she asked Michael Kimmel, what does toxic masculinity mean to an 8-year-old? And that's a particularly important question. What does it tell our 8-year-old boys, our 7 and 6-year-old boys, and even, any range in preteens and up until their adulthood? What does it mean to them when you would tag a word like toxic onto masculinity? Yeah. And then you follow it with a bunch of dialogue about boys and what boys are becoming and what men do. And of course, the famous crime statistics, well, more men commit violent crimes. And there's all this sort of pile of language that we've got around the idea that ultimately becomes the message that you're toxic. So we've got that. And then on the other side of the story, of course, where is toxic femininity? Right. Where does that exist? Because there can't be one without the other.
Paul, what did Kimmel say to the question?
He said nothing.
Oh.
Absolutely nothing. Of course, he was going to say nothing. He sat there silently. Of course, this is also at the same debut where he tried to present himself as on our side.
Right.
After, he denied being a part of the organization that had tagged fathers' rights activists as an abuser's lobby. And that was part of his language back in that day. And of course, he lied about that, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
But where I really think we need to go with this, inevitably, there's always a Hollywood idiot around, but we simply we should not allow this kind of narrative to go unchallenged. And I don't think that toxic femininity is a response that's worth anything. Criminality, mental illness, violence, none of these things are gendered. We know that. Every bit of research tells us that none of these things can be, attributed to gender.
Right.
So we don't have toxic masculinity isn't real. Do some men have convoluted notions of what manhood is? Sure. Some women have convoluted notions of what it means to be a woman and the entitlement and privilege that comes with that. Yeah. Do we tag the entire gender as toxic for that? I can't buy it. Not me.
Of course not. It's absolutely silly. I mean, if you really think about it, it's one of the silliest things you can imagine. I mean, taking an entire sex and then labeling them as being negative. And this all started, I think, with the feminists, in the early, 60s, with the men are pig stuff. And it's been spread since then. By who? By the media, of course, and by feminists, and by Hollywood, and by, as Moiret Allegiere says, lacademia. All 4 of those have been slowly pushing this idea that there's something wrong with men, until now we're at a boiling point where people will look at what Meryl Streep said and go, oh, she's wrong. It's like these 4 institutions have pushed this idea so hard that now it's just like in 2002 when the APA and the psychological industry started pushing these ideas that men are toxic. With the norms research where the norms for men were violence. I mean, so to me, this is the most crazy part of it, is that slowly these 4 and probably more parts of our culture have been pushing this idea to the point where most people accept it.
Not only accept it, you'll be vilified, demonized, attacked, or your career can be destroyed. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to destroy Meryl Streep's career.
They'd have a hard time.
She could go off into Happy Land with all her money and awards and not be bothered. But other people's careers have been destroyed and certainly can be destroyed. Yes. And this is equivalent to telling people, unless you use the N-word, we're going to destroy you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Unless you use that word to describe blacks, because we all know that's what blacks are. Mm-hmm. And they're terrible people, and they smell bad, and they commit crimes, and they're not safe to be around, and the white women need to be afraid. Mm-hmm. This is the same kind of messaging. It's the same kind of mentality behind this. And it is amazing to me that otherwise, that's why I never assume Streep's intelligence or anybody's intelligence in Hollywood. How can anybody behave that way about a class of people and not recognize the bigotry that is blazing through those kind of sentiments.
Yeah.
And when you tell a lie, go ahead, Janice.
Oh, well, sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to jump in there, but yeah, I mean, and the what really bugs me is the blatant dishonesty of those who defend the terms. They're outraged that anybody would pretend to think this has anything to do with men in general. Both the articles I read that were scoffing and expressing scorn and outrage that Meryl Streep had said this ridiculous thing. One of them was called by Emily Alford and Jezebel, who said Meryl Streep doesn't know what toxic masculinity means. And then an even worse piece in The Guardian by Arwa Madawi saying, seriously, Meryl Streep, toxic masculinity doesn't hurt men, it kills them. And both of them pretend that what as you said, Paul, every 8-year-old knows isn't true. Oh, it has nothing to do with men. We're not saying men are toxic in general. We're not saying that that's what masculinity is in its essence. Oh yeah, we're just talking about the social conditioning of men. Yeah, well, why do you call it toxic masculinity then? I mean, everybody knows that that's what you're saying. You're talking about something in maleness itself as being poisonous and harmful, both men and to the society in general. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, because you called it toxic masculinity, and you'd be the first one screaming if we did ever start widely using the phrase toxic femininity to talk about women in general. Of course, both of them, well, in particular, this Madawi pretends that there is such a thing as toxic femininity. But guess what toxic femininity is, according to this, what was her name, Madawi? According to her, it's being told that you have to be good and pure. Isn't that
skinny?
Difficult? Yeah, and skinny. That's what toxic femininity is. It's not, kind of, violence and aggression. And
I had no idea about that. I can't imagine the horror of telling people they needed to be good.
Good, yeah. It's awful, yeah. And being told that you're pure in some way, and that you should make. That's just, it's so hard. What a burden. It would be much better to be told that that there's something in you, in your drive to compete, in your in your love of aggression or your ambitiousness, that's a part of you that's toxic. I mean, it's so amazing. I just love how these left-wing feminists figure that they get to define what words mean. And in this article, she even says that right-wingers, as if it's only right-wingers who ever object to the term, but she says right-wingers like to pretend the phrase is an attack on men. Oh yeah, right. We just like to pretend it. It's not that we really actually think that calling something toxic is an attack on masculinity. I mean, it's just the arrogance, the unabashed coercion, the superciliousness, the pretense of concern. It really makes me sick. And and of course she does the usual thing. She talks about how if only men would learn to talk about their feelings and would learn to cry and all of this, they'd be so much better off. As if this woman or her paper, The Guardian, as if they have ever looked at issues from the male perspective, as if they have ever shown empathy for male suffering, as if they've ever cared about suicide or homelessness or fatherlessness or unequal treatment in divorce or any of the issues that we care about, as if they've ever even pretended to cover them in a fair and unbiased way. I mean, it just
I do have a suggestion for them, though. If this writer really believes that part of what constitutes the enabling, or rather the pressure for toxic femininity being a message of female purity, please visit the comments to my YouTube videos. I think you'll find some allies in the men's movement, because they are not pushing a message of women's purity. They are equally critiquing both sexes.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have anything to do with either one of them being pure. I mean, which ass does somebody pull that out of, the idea that the version of toxic femininity is purity and goodness. Yes, there is a problem with the sugar and spice narrative about women. I'll agree with that. I think I'm absolutely behind it. But if we were going to call toxic femininity and make that a thing, it would probably be a lot more of on the lines of making false rape accusations, of manipulating sympathies from people for proxy violence, damseling, that sort of thing, exercising privilege that just because you owe me, you must pay because I have a vagina. If I was going to call something toxic femininity, that's where I would go for. But I'm not going to do that, because the fact of the matter is that men and women are co-creators. We are. We create in each other and in ourselves what has worked and some things that don't work. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. But I can't imagine how the feminists could have got any more off track in trying to understand those problems. It absolutely amazes me. It is like they're retarded.
Yes, it's like they're retarded. It's a one-sided smear, and the thing that Janice was saying before that I completely agree with is these people cannot see it, or they won't see it, that it's a smear. I remember when I was on Division 51, the mailing list there, and I'd talk about how harmful it was to talk about toxic masculinity to boys and to men. And they would say, no, this is not harmful to them. No, this is just something that, this is a theoretical thing. We're not talking about men, we're talking about masculinity. And I just freak. But I'd say, look, it's like you have this bag. It's called masculinity. You have a label, masculinity, and you put the man in the bag, and then you hit the bag, right? Well, you're going to do something to the man when you hit the fucking bag, right? And they didn't get it. I mean, it's like if you attack masculinity, you have to be attacking men and boys. There's no way around it. But I'll tell you what, one of the things that helped me a lot in all this was Jordan Peterson's definition of toxic masculinity, which to me is he just takes it and completely nails it. And he says, toxic masculinity is an attempt to smear the idea of masculinity by confusing masculine competence with tyranny. And man, that just says it all. They're trying to smear good men and good boys by implying they're tyrannical, when the things that they do naturally are tyrannical. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
And the damaging effects, Tom, I'm reminded, I just now thought of this, and I hadn't thought of it in probably 20 years, but from about 20 years back in Houston, there was a story about a boy, a 6 or 7 year old, who touched a bus driver's breast. And it wasn't established whether it was inadvertent or what had happened there, but the bus driver freaked out about it. It turned into a news story. And the news people interviewed some boys, and they interviewed another boy not associated with the incident, who was apparently on the same bus. And they asked him if they thought he was wrong, and he said yes. And they asked him why, and he said, because boys are bad.
Huh.
Man, think about that.
Yeah. And that was 20 years ago, eh?
That was 20 years ago. And I mean, this brainwashing about men and masculinity has been going on. And certainly since the turn of the century, they've escalated the toxic masculinity a lot, but it's been there a long, long time. You're right, Tom. Men are pigs. That's what they say.
Yeah.
And they've been pushing that narrative for 50 years now. And now it's just heartbreaking to hear a 7 or 8 year old boy, when you ask him about boys, and he says they're bad by nature.
Men are bad.
What a horrible way, a horrible thing to do to multiple generations.
Yeah, can you imagine what that does to this kid to think that?
Yeah.
I mean, does he ever want to become a man? Does he ever want to grow up to become something that he hates already? I mean, that's what we're doing to these boys. We're telling them that they're destined to become something bad. And the only way around it is to become more like women. It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. It's crazy. And I'll tell you what else I think is that this whole toxic masculinity thing, that when women push this stuff, That's as narcissistic as you can get. Because what they're saying is boys and men should be more like me. Me, 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 me. You know, cut it out. Wake up, grow up. It's not all about you. You know, people are different. Can you accept people's difference? And they cannot. They cannot accept people's difference. And that's really a big part of the problem. You know?
It fits into the whole narrative. If women were in charge, we wouldn't have any wars. And,
Right.
and you don't even look at, look at the history of European monarchs, females, and Margaret Thatcher and Indira Gandhi and Golda Meir. Hillary Clinton. You can go through modern history all the way back several hundred years, hundreds and hundreds of years, and you find plenty of women willing to send men to war. It's a total fallacy.
White feather.
It seems like that feminism, in its effort to create personality disordered women, has made cognitive dissonance a non-starter. It's like they can operate in complete contradiction at about many points at all time, and it never seems to faze them. Yes, men are pigs, but we're not talking about men.
Right. Not my father and my brother.
Yeah, and not you
Men.
in particular. Well, maybe me, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
this sort of whole mentality of, yes, well, yeah, women, there'd be no wars if women were in charge. Yeah. It's like, hello? Yes, it is narcissism, Tom,
Yeah.
and it's hate.
Yes.
It is hate. Feminism is a hate movement.
It's a narcissistic rage, you know,
Yeah.
they go into that's just unbelievable. And everyone thinks it's okay. You
Yeah,
know?
it is truly a kind of mass lunacy.
Yep. It really is.
You know, so for the fact that Meryl Streep, at least for that moment, and we hope in other moments in her life and her career, from this enormously privileged vantage point that she has, maybe she will continue to voice some of these truths.
Boy, let's hope so. Because that would really help. I mean, just one person breaking the ice may open it up so that other people can start doing the same thing. That would be great.
The fact that there's been the kind of reaction that there's been to it certainly shows that people are worried that when one person like Meryl Streep goes off script, even if it's just in a few sentences, even if it wasn't part of a coherent program or, you know, any sort of well-developed argument that she was making, that maybe that's enough to cause a chink in the orthodoxy and to cause other people to come forward and say, I hate that phrase as well. And that's all it might take to actually start to crumble.
Yes, and the media might pick it up.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it starts to crumble. That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That would be great. Unfortunately, so far, what we've seen, though, is just the retaliation. Nobody else from Hollywood has stepped up to say she's right. They haven't stepped up to defend her.
No.
What they've done is gone for the jugular.
Yeah.
Like we knew we would. The moment, I mean, I'm sure both of you had the same feeling. The moment that I saw that quote as a news headline, I thought, oh boy, here they come for her. That was my absolute first thought. It was that they were going to be gunning for her.
Yeah.
And I do want to give her credit, but as I said before we started this discussion today, a broken clock is right twice a day. This is once for Meryl Streep. She's right about this one thing.
You know, when I saw it, Paul, the first thing that came to my mind was shock. I couldn't believe it. I had to read the thing 3 times to believe that she actually said that. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was, you know, they were being funny. It was literally, it was such a shock that it was like, it just took a while to sink that she actually said that. So bless her heart for being right one time. You know,
And I hate to be the cynic in the group, but for all we know, it's calculated.
And why do you think she'd do that then? What would her reason be?
Well, I think for the same reasons, possibly, that Jesse Smollett created a hate crime against himself, that there is moments in people's careers where they know how to turn a lot of cameras on them and where they know how to get their name mentioned. And so if you look at the net result, I'm always a big believer in, I don't care about what people say, I watch what they do. What's the end result of what they do? And the end result is all the attention is on Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I know for a fact, because I certainly don't know for a fact what her motives were, but I can't rule that out as a possible here.
Right. Interesting.
It's hard to know with Hollywood celebs. I don't understand how they operate, and it's ridiculous that we accord them the kind of attention, for political statements that we do. I love Meryl Streep as an actor. She is amazing.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah, I certainly don't look to her as any kind of moral arbiter. But regardless of that, she hasn't yet apologized. She hasn't walked back. She's taken a lot of really, negative response, and as far as I know, she isn't backing down from that statement. So for that, I think we are going to give her, if not the humanitarian award, we're going to give her a humanitarian certificate, a certificate of goodwill. Or maybe even what we thought of as a participation award. She participated in a kind of basic humanity by saying a true thing and not apologizing for saying a true thing. And so for that, although we don't give her the full award, she does get the certificate. So,
and if she is right anytime again in the near or even distant future, we will upgrade that to a full award. But she has to be right more than once to get recognized. Of course, I also thought, wouldn't it be sweet if some well-intentioned feminist out there saw this and brought it up to Meryl Streep as, oh my God, the MRAs are on your side. You must be a terrible person.
I like that. She must be bad.
Yes, she must be. But yeah, I agree. We give her the honorable mention participation award, E for effort, that sort of thing, little gold star for good conduct.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And we're going to give our PUTA award, I think we agreed, to the Guardian journalist. And in fact, I think it should extend, maybe she could share it with all of the feminists on the Guardian staff who beat away at the feminist drum day in and day out, reinforcing ideas about feminine purity and masculine toxicity. But this one in particular, Arwa Madawi, who wrote the article, Seriously, Meryl Streep, Toxic Masculinity Doesn't Hurt Men, It Kills Them. We would really like you, Ms. Madawi, to do some articles from a male perspective, to show some empathy for men, to do some writing about men's issues that doesn't simply reiterate the idea that men are in their masculinity toxic. So
Amen.
You get our PUTA award for your dishonesty, your arrogance, and indeed your hatefulness.
Yes.
And that's flying PUTA.
Flying PUTA.
She's flying, baby.
Where
She's
is
flying.
And I can't think of anybody in this particular instance that deserves it more. That article was an abomination.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
It absolutely was. But of course,
typical.
We're talking about the Guardian. There's never been a bigger pack of PUTAs out there.
Pack of PUTAs, I like that. Yeah. Newsletter?
Yes. We have a newsletter, which you can go to the link below and sign up for. You also, if you go to regardingmen.com or to avoicefrommen.com, you'll see one of those annoying little pop-ups that pop up that invite you to subscribe to the Regarding Men newsletter. And once again, just for those who haven't heard it, we established this newsletter not only to keep you abreast of new videos that we have and new material coming out, and these programs in particular, but because with all the censorship efforts going on today, attacking the men's movement in particular, it's important that we own our own platforms to communicate with our followers so that, one of these days, if we're kicked off of YouTube, we'll still be carrying this on. We'll be uploading the videos somewhere else, but you'll be getting a notification of where they are. So please do sign up for that newsletter. We've already had a very good response to it, and we're looking forward to more.
Yeah, good. And it's free, and it's probably going to be about 4 a month, maybe 4 emails a month, so it's not going to be overloading you with email. And I'll put up a picture of the last one so people can kind of see what it is we're going to send out.
There you go, yes.
It's filled with good information. It's filled with links to all kinds of men's issues related stuff. So I think you'll like it.
And we are open to suggestions. If there's anything that you guys would like to see in the newsletter, please let us know. We will be happy to include that in how we plan this thing out.
Yes.
And with that, I think we are done for today. Well, one more pitch for ICMI, because we're getting close, folks. This is the month of June, and come the middle of August, the three of us will be in Chicago, Illinois, the home of good, well-bred, non-corrupt politicians. And Al Capone.
Fits right in.
But for the International Conference on Men's Issues for 2019, and we have people coming from all over the world. You will see the three of us there. You will see Sargon of Akkad there. You will see Count Dankula there. You'll see Terrence Pop there. Many, many more, actually. So link below on my channel to ICMI 19. You can still get tickets, but they have been selling rather well. This looks to be an incredibly robust conference, and I'm totally looking forward to it and to getting back together with my old friends again.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, me
Yes,
too.
indeed. Yeah.
Hey.
Good. And by the way, Paul's new book is out. Just to let you know.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
In case you're one of the 2 or 3 people I haven't told yet, my new book, Men, Women, Relationships, Surviving the Plague of Modern Masculinity, is available below in both paperback and Kindle versions. And I welcome you to buy it. And if you have bought it already, I welcome reviews. Those are much appreciated. So if you would come through with that, I would like it very much. And that's all I'll pitch for now.
Good deal. That's good. So we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Are we finished?
All right.
We are finished.
Men are good.
Hey.
No
Bye-bye.
more us.
Bye-bye.
All right, y'all take care.